Hello, first grade scientists! Miss Hutchinson here in my backyard for our last science lab of the year. It's almost time for summer. Can you believe it? And because it's almost time for summer, I thought our last lab could be an activity that's one of my favorite summertime activities. Before I tell you what it is, why don't you turn and tell someone at home some of your favorite summertime activities? You guys have so many great summertime activities, but one of my all-time favorites is bubbles. So today for our last lab of the year, we're gonna make some bubble solution and we're gonna see just what we can do with bubbles. Are you ready to give it a try? All right, so the first step of today's activity is to actually make our own bubble solution. You can of course buy it at the store, but maybe we can make a better one when we work together. I did some research, I found a recipe, and I think it's gonna be great. So let's go over our materials and then we'll come back and make it together. Materials to make your own bubble solution: 1½ cups of water, half a cup of dish soap, 2 teaspoons sugar, and a large cup to mix it in. There will be extra solution which will last if you store it in a tightly sealed container. Alright, so we've checked our materials and let me show you what I've got to work with. So I've got a large container to make my solution in. I've already measured out my 1½ cups of water. I've got a big container of dish soap. I've got my sugar here ready to go. And I've got some various measuring utensils. I've got a 1-cup measuring cup for my soap, a teaspoon, and then a regular spoon for mixing. So let's just dive right in and get going. Before we dive right in, here are the procedures to make your own bubble solution. 1. Measure 1½ cups of water into your large cup. 2. Measure 2 teaspoons of sugar and add it to your water. Stir until the sugar dissolves. 3. Measure half a cup of dish soap and add it to your sugar water solution. 4. Gently stir your mixture together. 5. Try not to stir or shake your bubble solution too much. 6. Now you're ready to go out and blow some bubbles. The first thing we want to do, if you haven't already measured it, is measure out 1½ cups of water and pour it into your container. Okay. There you go, and then I can put that off to the side. Next, and let me angle this a little bit so you can see better, our sugar. We're going to do 2 teaspoons of sugar. So if this is my teaspoon, I want a nice level scoop. So I go in there, and I shake it, and I make it nice and level. There's 1, and 2. Now, I'm going to make sure I get all the sugar out of my spoon, put that spoon off to the side, then I've got my regular spoon. Carefully stir it. You want that sugar to dissolve, but you don't want to make a mess if your container is not so big. Alright, as that dissolves for another minute, let me close up my sugar, put that also out of the way. Next up will be soap. Alrighty, stir this for another moment, make sure my sugar's all dissolved. You can kind of still see it in there a little bit, so let me give it another quick stir. It's definitely becoming less and less noticeable, which means it's dissolving. It's becoming a part of the water. All right, and there we go. Now I've got some sugar water. Put that down for a moment. Here's my 1-cup measuring cup, and I'm going to measure to the ½ cup mark. It's right there. So move that for a moment. Open up my dish soap. I'm going to take the top all the way off. And I measure out a ½ cup. Okay. Let's see. I think I got it right to that ½ cup mark. Can you see it? Let me see. Yeah, right at that ½ cup mark. Perfect. So let me close this so I don't spill it everywhere. Put it off to the side. Here's my container. And I'm going to very carefully pour it in. And I'll use my spoon to scoop out some of the extra that's stuck to the measuring cup. If I don't get it all out, that's okay, but I want to get out as much as I can. Okay, that'll do. All right, now put that off to the side. I do want to mix my solution together, but I don't want to go too fast and make it really, really foamy and bubbly. I want it to combine, but I don't want to make it all frothy in here. Just give it a couple of stirs until it looks like it's all together. And then your bubble solution is ready to go. Now, I read that a lot of times when you make bubble solution, they are ready immediately, but if you can let it sit for like an hour or two, it's even better. And then the next day, it's even better again. I'm not really sure why, but that's something I read. Now, I wonder if you're wondering, like I was, why add sugar? Because I was very confused when I found the recipe that said put in sugar. So I did a little bit more research, and it turns out when you add sugar to your bubble solution, it makes the water in the solution and in the bubbles evaporate more slowly. So your bubble solution will last longer and your bubbles will be stronger. Found that very fascinating. All right, so it looks like my bubble solution is ready to go. Now I'm going to get a bubble wand in just a moment, and what I thought I could do first is compare this bubble solution to some store-bought bubble solution and see if I think one is better than the other. So give me a second to grab my other solution and some bubble wands, and then we're going to test it out. All right, we'll be right back. All right, so I've got my store-bought bubble solution and our homemade bubble solution, and I thought let's blow a few bubbles and see if we can tell a difference. So I'll start with my store-bought solution. It's hard to tell if the solution is blue or just the bottle. I don't know. Ooh. Wow, those are some good bubbles. And I'm out. So about 3 blows worth. That's not bad. And lots of bubbles still kind of flying around in my backyard. And let's try our bubble solution. Ooh, those are some good bubbles too. I can't even tell a difference at this point. Maybe at home, if you want to give it a try and you're going to compare the two, see if you can see if some bubbles fly higher. Do they last longer? It's hard to show you here in my backyard at the moment, but I bet if you tried it at home, you might see a difference. Or maybe your homemade solution is just as good as the store-bought solution. All right, so the second part of our activity today is all about making bubble wands. So I'm going to review the materials and the procedures for this engineering challenge. Can you make a bubble wand to do something cool? Like to make a cool bubble. Like maybe you want to make a really big bubble. Or maybe you want to make really, really tiny bubbles. Or maybe you want to make lots of bubbles at once. Can you design a bubble wand that'll do that for you? Let's look at our materials. I'm going to gather some stuff. We'll go over our procedures, and then I'll give you a few examples of things you can try at home. So let's first look at the materials you can use to make a bubble wand right at home.
Here are some materials you can use to make your own bubble wand. Empty plastic water bottles, paper tubes, pipe cleaners or chenille stems, twist ties, bent wire, straws, paper, berry baskets, cheesecloth, rubber bands, and anything else you have around the house.
All right, so we looked at the materials for possible things you could find around your house to make bubble wands. I did some digging and let's see what I found. I found an old plastic water bottle. I'll have to cut it, but I'm gonna work with that. I've got some paper tubes from paper towels. This one's from toilet paper. I didn't have any berry baskets to try and make like lots of bubbles, but I found some of this netting stuff. So I'm gonna try and use this for something. I'm not quite sure yet. But I have that to use. I've got some rubber bands to help attach stuff. I found some little twist ties I can use. I've got some straws I'm going to work with. Some pipe cleaners. These are nice because they're kind of wire wrapped in, wire and covered in some furry stuff. And so you can make different shapes if you want to try to make bubbles of different shapes. And I've got some string. So I'm going to try and make a bubble wand for really big bubbles, a bubble wand for really small bubbles, and a bubble wand for lots of bubbles at once. I'm going to check my procedures and then I'm going to give it a try. I'm not going to show you exactly what I do. I want you to see what you can come up with, but I'll show you some examples after we check our procedures.
Here's the procedure to make your own bubble wand. First, think about what kind of bubbles you want your wand to make. Big bubbles, little bubbles, lots of bubbles at once. Second, try out the materials you have at home to see what kind of bubbles each makes. Third, come up with a design for your bubble wand. You can draw it on paper or just picture it in your mind. Fourth, build your bubble wand and test it out. Did it make the bubbles you want? Fifth, can you improve your design to make your bubble wand even better?
All right, so we've looked at the steps. It really is a design challenge for you. Think about what kind of bubbles you want to make, check out the materials you have, and come up with a design. Then, if you've got a design in mind, I want you to build it and I want you to try it. Test it. Did it work? Did it do what you wanted it to do? If it did, hooray! Could you make it even better? If it didn't, what do you think you could fix to try and help it make the kind of bubbles that you want? All right, I'm going to pause for a minute. I'm going to build a couple things and I'm going to show you what I came up with. But I want you to give it a try on your own as well. All right, so let's check back in a few minutes and see what I come up with.
20 minutes later.
Did you make a bubble wand? I took some time and I made a few bubble wands, in fact. So, for my big bubbles, I did a simple one. I took a water bottle and I cut off the bottom, and I think that'll make a pretty big bubble. We'll test that in a moment. For small bubbles, I made a couple of different bubble wands. So I took a twist tie and I just twisted it around my finger, and I have a pretty small opening that I'm hoping makes some small bubbles. I also thought maybe this sort of a shape kind of looks like a butterfly, but 4 small hoops, so I can make lots of little bubbles at once. I might give that a try. Now, for my lots of bubbles, I'm going to experiment with this netting. It's just my paper tube with the netting around it, but with all those little holes, I think I might be able to make lots of bubbles at once. So we'll test that in a minute as well. And last but not least, I thought about, hey, could I make a bubble that isn't round? What if my bubble wand was a square? So I made this one out of a pipe cleaner, and I'm thinking maybe if I blow a bubble out of this, it might be square. Why not? I could give it a try, right? So I have this one as well. I have one more, but I'll show you that one at the very end. So I've got my bubble solution right here. I put the lid on it to keep it nicely stored while I was working. And let's see. Let's start with just my water bottle. I'm just going to dip the end in there. And let's see how big a bubble I can make. Oops, it popped. All right, let's try that again. There we are. Whoa, that's a pretty big bubble. So was that one. Oh, okay, easy to make, and it makes some pretty good sized bubbles, but only a couple at a time. All right, let me try my little one. Let's see what happens when I use my teeny tiny one. Ooh, those are pretty small bubbles. They're flying all over the place. Pretty small. But again, it doesn't last very long. Now let me try, I want to try this other one for small bubbles. Maybe this one. I don't know, maybe this one will work a little bit better. Let's try it. And because it's fuzzy, I gotta let that solution drop off a little bit. Not as successful, was it? That's okay. Ooh. Yeah, I would say this one wasn't very successful. Maybe just one bubble at a time. Maybe the loops are too small, or maybe this is too fuzzy. Oops. All right. Well, speaking of fuzzy, let me try this one and see. Can I make a square-shaped bubble? What do you think? Do you think my bubble will actually blow out in the shape of a square? I don't know. Let's try it. And again, because it's heavier with that fuzz on it, I'm going to let it drip for a moment. Alrighty. Oh, I lost it. Let's try one more time. Did you see it? Oops. Ooh, the wind is kind of doing my job for me. It's not lasting very long either. Does it look like it's coming out in the square shape though? Did you see it? How about that one? It doesn't seem to be, huh? It seems no matter how hard I try to make a square-shaped bubble, my bubble just comes out round. Definitely round. All right, well, I can't make a bubble of a different shape, but it does blow nice round bubbles, although it's a little furry, so it gets wet quickly. All right, so I think the last one I've showed you is my lots of bubbles at once. Let's see what happens when I dip this in and try to blow lots of bubbles at once. You ready? Whoa! It's like geo bubbles. That's pretty cool. That's not really what I was expecting. Whee! Wow. Ooh, landed on my table for a moment. That's pretty cool. Ooh, that might make my favorite kind of bubbles. Lots of bubbles stuck together and they still fly off. That one was pretty cool. Maybe you want to try and make something similar. I would maybe make it on plastic because this paper is going to get wet really fast. All right, so I hope you try making bubble wands at home to make the kind of bubbles you want. All right, boys and girls, I hope you have some time to make bubble solution, make some bubble wands, come up with a design, improve upon your design until you find the wand or create the wand that you envisioned to make the bubbles you want to make. That's all I've got for you this time. I did want to share some ideas you could do once you make your bubble solution and your bubble wands. You could do a bubble race. You and a family member blow a bubble, and can you get it to cross a line before it pops? Can you do it first? You could come up with use a surface and cover it with some bubble solution and see if you can build things with bubbles. When everything's kind of covered in solution, they'll all stick together. Could you make something cool? Could you have a competition to see who could make the biggest bubble or who can pop the bubbles the fastest? There's so much you can do with bubbles this summer. So you may not have time this weekend, but summer's just around the corner, so maybe you come back and you can make bubble solution and bubble wands this summer, which is one of my favorite summertime activities. Boys and girls, that's it for this science lab. I hope you have a wonderful, safe, and fun summer. And until I see you again, stay curious, little scientists.